The phone call arrived the way winter arrives in a warm room, quietly, with a draft you can't find. "Mom," my daughter said, her voice clipped at the edges, "I'm leaving for Europe tomorrow. I already sold your beach house and your car." She didn't breathe on the last word. She let it sit there on the plate between us like something overcooked. "My name is Antonia. I am 71, and I have learned that people say already when what they mean is don't ask me for the part of the story I hid." In my kitchen the light schemes the counter like a bird that trusts the window. The kettle makes a promise and keeps it. On the table sits a blue folder I keep near the sugar because sweetness and paperwork both steady the hand. I didn't shout. I didn't throw the phone or ask how. I said, "Angela, are you safe?" She said, "Of course I'm safe, why are you always dramatic?" Then she hung up, and the silence put its elbows on my table. I rubbed my thumb over the seam of the folder and thought of my late husband, Luca, who wore his wedding ring like a bandage and a vow. He was a mason who measured twice and cut once and left notes everywhere, on the back of receipts, in the margin of cookbooks, in the empty parts of a day. He died in a month that smelled like rain and disinfectant and the fruit we kept buying to pretend appetite would fix us. Before he went, he gave me a key I didn't understand. Not metal, a plan. "There will be a time," he said, "when you will need to be stronger than the room expects. Here is how. People think a hidden fortune is a map with an X and a chest that knows how to be found. Ours was quieter. Luca had kept a second set of ledgers the way careful men keep spare fuses. He'd bought boring things, municipal bonds, dividend funds, a sliver of a company that sells screws to people who underpay attention. He wrapped them in a trust with a name so plain it couldn't be suspicious and left it to me with instructions written in his hand that always leaned a little right, as if the sentence wanted to keep walking. "Use this," he wrote, "only when you must. And when you use it, teach." After he died, I tried to keep the house upright with recipes and lists. Angela, my only child, my late-in-life laughter, started bringing around a man named Daniel who shook hands like a plan and smiled like a billboard. He had ideas that arrived fully dressed, and most of them cost me something. "We can rent out your beach place," he said, "make it work for you. We can refinance," he said, "unlock your equity." He said unlock like a thief might say it to a window, lovingly. I said no until grief got tired. Then I said maybe. Then I said I'll think. He heard yes. Angela learned his yes. I bought the beach house when I was 43 with money that had no reason to be generous except that I had worked and not complained. It sits on a stretch of coast where gulls write their names in loops and the water keeps every appointment. The day we signed, Luca carried me across the threshold as a joke, and we laughed so hard he almost dropped me. We slept on the floor the first night and ate peaches over the sink and decided that our life would be built from decisions like that, little ones, repeated. We raised Angela on weekends there, sand in the tub, salt on our lips, a string of sunsets that felt like we were stealing from heaven politely. After the funeral, Angela stayed close for 3 months. She brought groceries I paid for and stood in my kitchen rearranging the bowls, as if organization could grieve for me. Daniel whispered ideas to her and to me, and somehow they sounded different in each ear. "You shouldn't be driving that old car," he said. "We'll sell it, we'll get you something easier." "You shouldn't be managing property," he said. "We'll take it off your hands." He used "we" like it was a blanket. I am old enough to know that sometimes "we" means you paying and me smiling. The first time a document with my name on. It showed up in a handwriting that wasn't mine, it was small, a signature clipped short on a mail-in Form 4 account access. The second time, it had witnesses I'd never heard of. The third time, it had a stamp. Forgery is bold at first and then it gets bolder. I did not panic. I opened Luca's folder. I called the number he had written next to the words if needed, a lawyer named Valdez whose voice sounds like doors that close correctly. "Mrs. Russo," she said, "this is not my first dinner with wolves. Come in." I brought her the blue folder, the letters, the trust, the list of accounts Luca had built like a seawall out beyond the waves. She read slowly, which is my favorite speed when the truth is expensive. "We will take the long way," she said. "Quiet first. Locks. Notifications. Title alerts. You will say yes to nothing. You will sell nothing. You will not argue. We will let paper argue for you." I exhaled like a tire that had been doing its job too long without air. When Angela called with the Europe announcement, my locks were already changed. Title freezes were already in place. The beach house, though some printer had just declared it gone, still sat in a trust that required me and a judge to let it leave. The car title had my name holding hands with a second secret, a GPS tile the size of a coin stuck beneath the glove box like a quiet, accurate memory. "We already sold your car," she'd said. I stirred my tea and pictured where it was. "We already sold your beach house," she'd said. I rubbed the seam of the folder and thought of the judge who would enjoy returning something that had not left. Do you think a mother can love a child who is busy trying to empty her pockets? Do you think love makes you foolish or simply patient? If you've been in a room like this, with a phone that says too much and a kettle that doesn't, leave one word below, here, listening, enough. I want this to be a place where older women don't have to shout to be heard. If you want to hear how the sale was not a sale, how the trip to Europe came home empty, and how I chose to teach instead of punish, you can subscribe. We keep a porch light on for the tired. I was a child of lists and weather. In our town the air could turn on you without warning, and my mother taught me to carry a sweater even on loud July days. She also taught me to count before I spoke, which is how I learned mercy and math at the same time. In those days, the world was large enough to hide in and small enough to fix. I remember my father's hands, stained with mortar and honesty. On Sundays he would nap in the chair by the window and snore like someone apologizing for how much they loved the week. He died before Luca did, and grief learned our address twice. Angela was a sunny child who liked to be looked at. She could put on a show with a spoon and a dish towel. We clapped even when the show was the same one as yesterday. I watched her absorption in attention the way you watch the tide. You know it is natural, you also know it can take. When she met Daniel in a summer that refused to end, I felt something in the room tilt. He was all gestures and futures. Some men sell you what you already own and make you feel grateful to rent it. He brought Angela new words, portfolio, leverage, arbitrage, and old ones dressed up, family, help, loyalty. I tried to like him. I tried so hard I almost succeeded. When Luca got sick, Daniel was useful in the ways that take nothing. He drove Angela to appointments. He brought soup. He took photos and he posted them. He said things like, "We've got your back," without explaining who's we, who's back. Luca, even then, wrote lists. One read, "If they hurry you, slow down." Another, "Don't answer questions with money." Another, the last he wrote to me when his hand already belonged half to another world, "Make the long yes to yourself." After the funeral, the house filled with people who spoke as if volume were kindness. They left casseroles that tasted like salt and sympathy. Angela stood in my kitchen and organized my spices into categories that made sense to no one but her. "It's time to modernize, Mom," she said. "We're a teen now." I wanted a team. I also wanted the sound of Luca's spoon on the side of a pot. It is possible to want two things that don't live in the same drawer. The first trouble with the beach house came disguised as help. "Let us handle bookings," Daniel said, and produced a slick platform page with photographs that made my own house look a little untrue. "It's too much for you," Angela added, not unkindly. "We'll take the calls." I said I would keep the keys and the calendar. They said of course, and then copies of my keys appeared in places they had no business being. The second trouble came as a refinance proposal with low rates and fees that hid like mice in the walls. "Sign here," he said, and slid a paper toward me. My hand went to the pen and stopped as if Luca had reached up and held it. When I told Valdez I had not signed, She nodded once and then built me a fence, alerts with my bank that would call me if anyone breathed near my accounts, title locks that turned every attempt at transfer into a recorded joke, passwords that only a woman who writes shopping lists on the back of envelopes could love. We called the car title office and added a flag. We set traps in the paper where a thief's foot would show up even when he thought he was wearing socks. So when Angela said already sold, I didn't argue. I let the next day arrive. Morning is the kind of friend who knocks and waits. I poured tea, opened my laptop, and watched the alerts line up like little birds landing on a wire. Attempted lien, attempted title transfer, a digital signature that looked convincingly like mine if you didn't know that my A always starts higher than my patience. I pressed a key and sent everything to Valdez. She replied with a single word, proceed. We went to court quietly. We brought a folder that had a body, a mind, and a conscience. The judge of record was the kind of woman whose glasses do not suffer fools. She read the trust clause Luca had tucked beneath the ordinary, no sale without the settler, me, in the room, awake and verified. My signature on the transfer glowed like a lie under the light. The notary who had stamped it testified from a storefront that sells boxes and indifference. Under a few questions he remembered that I was shorter than he recalled and left-handed when in reality I am right-handed and exactly 5'4" and will be on my last day. The court clerk stamped vacated on the sale like a mercy. Title returned as calmly as it had been stolen. The car, meanwhile, was resting in a parking structure at an airport Angela did not tell me about. My little tile told the truth. A young officer with a kind way of standing accompanied me to retrieve what was mine. You'd be surprised how often family forgets what the word means, he said, almost apologizing for humanity. I showed him the registration with my name and the alert from the DMV. He shook his head and helped me peel the notice off the windshield like a bandage after the skin has done its work. Angela texted from somewhere between a departure lounge and a dream. Don't you dare embarrass me, she wrote. Everyone knows this is your anxiety talking. Anxiety is a word that gets invited to too many parties where guilt should be the guest. I wrote back, I love you. Travel safe. Then I turned the phone over and called the locksmith for the beach house again, not because I needed to, but because sometimes the sound of a bolt sliding into a place it belongs steadies a heart. Do you think a mother's patience has a password? Do you think worry is a weather pattern you can learn to predict? If you've had your name used in sentences you didn't write, tell me the smallest habit that helped you stay yourself. 3 facts in the morning, a walk, a pot on the stove that insists on being stirred. Share it below. And if you need me to keep going, come along. We haven't reached the lesson yet. I met Daniel long before he realized he had met a person who keeps receipts. The man thought charm was a currency backed by a central bank. He had a talent for immediate solutions that ran on other people's fuel. The first time I saw him angry, it was when a waiter got his order wrong and apologized to me instead of him. He doesn't like when the universe misaddresses its letters. When they landed in Europe, their photographs came like postcards from a life someone else was paying for. Angela in sunglasses that look like an apology, Daniel in a jacket bought for rooms with echoes. Captions with words like finally and deserve. I let them wash up on my screen and then wash off. Valdez was busy on the shore. She filed criminal complaints for the forged transfer, civil actions for the attempted theft, and a neat little set of letters that made credit bureaus sit up straight. We did not do this to punish. We did this to teach the paper to behave. 3 days into their trip, Angela's voice went small. Mom, someone froze the accounts. We can't check into the next hotel. Daniel says call the bank and tell them it's a mistake. I remembered the years I would have done exactly that. I remembered the sound of my own yes making its way through rooms where it didn't belong. Call your bank, I said. Explain it to them. She said I was cruel. I said I was on my way to the beach to check on the lemons. At the house the air smelled like salt and furniture polish and something I had missed that came back without fanfare, permission to breathe. I opened windows, I let the ocean in, the way you let an old friend tell the truth without interrupting. I sat on the porch where Luca used to line up shells in ascending order and made a list. Lists turn panic into errands. Call the insurer. Done. Replace the porch bulb that flickers like a thought. Done. Email the accountant and ask for a short course in capital gains because knowledge, it turns out, is a blanket. Done. Put a clean set of sheets in the hall closet like welcome. Done. Wait. When Angela's world began to come apart, it did so one thread at a time. A debt collector called me, not because I owed, but because they had learned my number as the emergency exit for other people's fires. We're trying to reach Daniel, the voice said. You're down as a relative. I said no, I am not, and the word felt like a gate closing with the gentle finality of a library door. 2 days later Angela messaged that Daniel had business in Milan and would meet her in a few days. A week later she wrote that his phone was off. 10 days later she asked me to wire money because she was trapped by logistics. Logistics is a word you can put on any mess to make it look like a plan. I wrote, I can't. Then, because I am a mother, I added, find the embassy. They will help. She came home with a suitcase that looked too heavy for the amount of truth inside. She didn't call me from the airport. She didn't call me from the taxi. She knocked on my door like a person coming to borrow a cup of sugar, and when I opened it she looked 10 years younger and 20 years lost. He left, she said. He left, I repeated, not to gloat, but because repetition makes a sentence face itself. She sat at my table and asked for water. I poured it. A person can be wrong about what they deserve and still be thirsty. Mom, I need money, she said, quick as a reflex. I need a place to stay. I need you to fix this. I looked at her face, which is part Luca and part the girl who used to run into the waves and scream at the cold and then keep going. I have a place you can stay for a while, I said. Not the beach house. Here, in the spare room. There are rules. She rolled her eyes in the language she learned at 16. Rules? Yes, I said. Rent. Work. A savings account you fund, not me. No borrowing. No using my name in any sentence with a dollar sign attached. A counselor. You will write a letter to every lender you helped Daniel invite into your life, and you will begin, one by one, to tell them the truth. She called me cruel again. I could be on a plane to Paris, she said, as if Paris were a birthright. Yes, I said. And you could be sweeping a floor in a bakery where the bread smells like mornings that never judged you. You will choose. She chose to stay. My friend Agnes at the church kitchen hired her for 2 mornings a week. She cut vegetables as if the knife were making a point. She came home smelling like onions and humility. Humility is a perfume that doesn't advertise itself. She hated it at first. Then she started bringing home stories about the regulars, the man who always asks for an extra roll for later, the woman who laughs like she finally believed the joke. On Thursdays she cleaned rooms at a small family hotel by the river where sheets look like fields and towels like clouds hung out to weather. The owner, a woman who has raised 3 children on the tender discipline of clean corners, taught Angela how to fold a fitted sheet without swearing. It is a kind of wisdom I'd failed to give her. At night, Angela wrote letters. To whom it may concern, she began, and it did concern them, and it concerned her too. She wrote to the bank. She wrote to a store card she had opened for a sale that had never ended. She wrote to a man named Vittorio who called himself an investor and turned out to be a salesman for debt. She wrote the word regret and spelled it correctly. I did not save her. I made soup. I set out towels. I kept the house warm and the conversation cooler than we used to keep it. When she asked why I would not give her money when I had it, I told her the truth, because money is not what you need. You need to be a person again in your own eyes. She cried the way a kettle cries. She quieted. She worked again. If you're listening and the hardest thing you ever did was not rescue someone you love, tell me the smallest way you kept your heart from breaking, one walk, one prayer, one sentence you whispered to yourself in the mirror. Leave it below. And if you want to know how I revealed the fortune and kept it from becoming the same trap it had been for her, come with me. I waited 3 months. Time is a tutor with stern hands. Angela learned the weather of work, the 5 a.m. chill that eats your wrists, the ache in the knees that announces itself only when you sit down, the sweetness of a paycheck that owes you nothing but keeps you anyway. She learned to fix a hem. She learned to apologize without performance. She learned that the person who comments must be nice on someone else's life is often hungry and doesn't know how to ask. Daniel sent one email and then none. It contained a promise to sort things out and the kind of sentence men write when they have not met the judge inside a woman: tell your mother to be reasonable. Reasonable has done a lot of unpaid labor in my life. I let it rest. At night Angela would sit at my kitchen table and do the math I had done for decades: what goes where, what waits, what grows. She began bringing home stories from the kitchen that tasted like gratitude. There's a man named Raoul who stacks chairs like they're friends, she said. He told me his grandmother taught him that the last chair you stack should be the first chair you unstack, so no piece of furniture ever thinks it's forgotten. We laughed, which is the sound of a day deciding to forgive itself. When spring came, the lemons on the tree by the beach house turned a color that tells you to be hopeful and careful. I drove Angela there and let her walk the rooms. She touched the doorframe where Luca kept a pencil mark for her height, 12, 15, 18, back when years were a ladder she climbed 2 rungs at a time. I can't believe Daniel tried to take this, she said, and for the first time there was no edge in her voice, only a place where regret could sit without falling. He didn't, I said. He tried to steal your mother from you. The house was just his tool. She pressed her forehead to the glass. How did you stop it? I showed her the trust. I showed her Luca's handwriting. I showed her the clause that turned arrogance into a misprint. Then, at the table where we had once built sandcastle blueprints with a dull pencil and too much confidence, I put a new folder down. Gray this time. Inside was a letter with her name on it in Luca's leaning hand. I had read it once, the day after he died, and then I had put it away because timing is also a kind of love. She opened it with fingers that had learned the weight of soap. And the shape of spoons. Angela, it said, I have loved you twice for every time I told you. If you are reading this, your mother has decided you are ready to know the quiet thing I built to keep her company when I cannot. It is more money than I ever touched when I was alive, and you will be angry I didn't tell you. That's all right. I was a young man once and I know how loud the world can be. Money is a dog that must be trained. If you don't train it, it bites. Here are the rules. The rules were simple and old-fashioned in a way that felt new: money for education, health, shelter, honest work. No money for noise, for show, for the glitter you wear when you want strangers to think they know you. If you are married to a person who thinks money is proof, he wrote, you must not be married to this money. Angela cried the way a woman cries when she meets her father again in a sentence. Why didn't you tell me, she asked me, and then she answered her own question. Because I would have turned it into fireworks. She folded the letter carefully. What now? I told her what now. We would establish a separate trust for her with rules as strict and liberating as a good sonnet. She would contribute to it the way you feed a plant, regularly, without drama. She would make amends where she could, an apology to the notary who stamped a lie, a letter to the judge who had to waste her time, a meeting with our banker to explain, in an inside voice, that she understood what a signature means. She would ask Agnes for a third morning in the kitchen and earn the raise that Agnes was already trying to give her. She would pay rent to me for the room she occupied, and on the day she left, I would hand that rent back to her as a deposit for wherever she built her next small kingdom. We made appointments. We met with Valdez and with a counselor named Green who has a way of catching anger and turning it into a tool you can hold without bleeding. Angela told the truth in that room. She admitted the pleasure of being admired for things she hadn't earned. She admitted the fear that she was ordinary and that ordinary is an insult in a world that worships the golden, the curated, the edited. She admitted that she liked how Daniel made her feel like a person who already had the story everyone else was still writing. She admitted she didn't know how to be loved by people who don't need to be seen to be real. Green nodded like a woman who had raised 2 sons and a handful of gardens. Start with dishes, she said. Wash today's. Leave yesterday's out of the sink. A year is a tiny lifetime. In that year my daughter learned to be on time. She learned to tip too much when she could. She learned that the person who cuts fruit in the morning decides 1,000 small mercies the world will never applaud. She learned to say no to herself and I'm sorry to other people without making either sentence into a self-portrait. And slowly, as spring decided to stay and summer began to practice its lines, I started to see the girl who ran into the cold water and kept going because what else do you do with a big blue refusal but turn it into laughter? If you've ever handed someone a truth they weren't ready for and then watched them become ready, tell me one line you used to keep from rushing them. One sentence with a period. Leave it below. If you want to hear the last part, the day Daniel came back, the way we ended it without spectacle, the way peace finally learned our address, come to the kitchen with me. He returned like all the wrong things return, hungry, confident, certain that a knock can make a lock feel sentimental. A year to the month after the already sold phone call, Daniel showed up at the beach house while I was trimming lemon branches. He did not expect to find me there. He expected a ghost of the former arrangement, a door that opens when a man remembers to be charming. He wore a shirt that promised a meeting and eyes that promised a story. Antonia, he said, that voice like a velvet rope. We need to talk. I set the clippers down because weapons are never good metaphors. No, I said. You need to listen. He laughed the way men laugh when they think you're about to give them an anecdote they can interrupt. You froze the accounts, he said. You embarrassed us. I offered him the respect of honesty. You used my name as a credit card, I said. You attempted to steal my house. You taught my daughter that love is a subscription. I turned it off. He asked for Angela. I said she was not here. He said he was ready to make things right. I asked for a list. Men like Daniel do not like lists unless they wrote them. He apologized for miscommunications. He apologized for the optics. He reconciled nothing. When he started to raise his voice, I pointed to the sign Valdez had made me put by the gate, a simple notice that the property is under surveillance and trespassers will be asked to leave with help. He looked past me at the camera. He lowered his volume. You can't hide money forever, he said, like a line that worked in a cheaper movie. I am not hiding anything, I said. I am guarding what was never yours. He left with a promise to pursue remedies, a phrase men use when they want to frighten women who have already met the law and learned it can be kind if you bring it facts. Angela came home from the hotel shift with lines in her face that did not belong to him anymore. He was here, I said. I spoke to him. She sat down on the step and let the wind undo her hair. Did you give him anything? No, I said. I gave him a no. We did not hear from him again, not because life is tidy, but because paperwork is persistent. Valdez sent a final letter to his last known address, the sort of letter that knows how to find a conscience if there is one to be found. It contained numbers and statutes and the kind of math that ends conversations. She advised Angela to file for a dissolution of marriage in absentia. Green sat with Angela while she signed. The court obliged. Sometimes the clock does you a favor. On the day I decided Angela had earned the rest of Luca's letter, we were making soup and the onions made us pretend to be sentimental. I brought the gray folder again and set it on the table, and this time beside it I set a green one. The green held a deed to a small condo near the market where peppers shine like gossip, purchased not as a prize, but as a place, a room of her own, earned with shifts and letters and a year's worth of Saturdays. It's not the beach house, I said. That one belongs to the ocean and to me and to the part of you that is still a girl chasing foam. This one belongs to the woman who knows how to come home tired and still be kind. She cried. Then she laughed. Then she said, I'll need a sponge. We walked the rooms together, and she touched the counters like promises and opened the windows like sentences finally finishing. Do you forgive me? She asked, the way a person asks for weather they cannot predict. Yes, I said. Forgiveness is for my sleep. Trust will come on its own 2 feet, or it will not. Either way, we will be family the way people are family in kitchens, by washing what we use and putting it back clean. We wrote to Luca together. We sat on the porch of the beach house and read his letter again, and she wrote back on the back of it because some conversations belong on one paper. I am training the dog, she wrote. I am training myself. I will not mistake glitter for light. I will not confuse love with access. We folded the page and tucked it in the folder that lives near the sugar. If this story put a hand on your back, leave one word so the next person knows this is a place they can sit, hear, steady, beginning. Tell me the one small habit you use to keep your name belonging to you. And if you want to keep company with women who love quietly, subscribe. We don't count heads here, we count breaths. At night, I rinse the cup and set it to dry. I check the lock not because I'm afraid, but because I'm in charge. I rub a lemon leaf between my fingers and let the oil smell like every summer that earned me. I speak 3 facts into the room. The cup is warm. The window is open. The light is kind. And a 4th, because Luca taught me to add when necessary, I am Antonia. My daughter is becoming. We are at peace.